Masakazu Nakayama, a very respected physicist, but also involved in invention, as well as writing lots of books about Zen and the mechanism of creativity. He's a physicist, so very scientific, and we had a good communication between us whenever I visited him. This is like when I was in the 40s, for about 15 years until he passed away. Actually, one of the memorable stories I heard after his passing away, I met him before that to happen, perhaps a couple months ago, and I was told from his daughter that he passed away by the phone call when I was back in the US. But the story she told me was interesting, that when he passed away, just before that, he was talking with doctors and nurses, was in the bed at the hospital where I visited before. And the conversation was very casual, and then they look at some other direction, the doctor and nurses, and then when look back to Mr. Nakayama, he was already passed away. Peaceful death. Knowing him personality, quiet gesture, a gentleman-like behavior, calm and quiet. I remember a story of us talking together about God or creativity perhaps, and then when we had the break, he was watching outside and there was a tulip blooming in his garden, and he told me, or he was just talking to himself, isn't it interesting to see the color of the tulip flower coming from somewhere? So the reason I'm talking about Mr. Nakayama is connected to the video I talked about, the God. In his book too, I think he mentioned that there's a way of dealing with the situation when God is playing a game. So there's a game, he said, God is invented and we are part of the game, and we are to find a way so that you can play the game with God effectively. The term God is very generic, and he can talk about it, but basically he's from the Zen principle. He liked Zen so much, the mechanism of wisdom of how Buddha came up with this Buddhism, or his way of observing the world. And he looked at that from the scientific point of view too. And there's even a discussion about, similar to AI or artificial intelligence, he was developing a model called human brain computer, where he described the model of the brain and how we are constructed and the way that our mind can function can cause some trouble, cause suffering, but it can bring out the creativity if we know how to understand how the plane is constructed and utilize the power of creativity. So such discussion is actually pretty much connected to Zen, although Zen doesn't put the word God in a way Christian or other religion may talk about, and they don't talk about, Buddha doesn't talk about God. So his approach of religion, if you call that, is not so much in terms of believing entity like God that you create, but very scientific. So that's how he approached, and that fit to my way of looking at Zen, because it's called actually self-powered as opposed to, what's the other one? Other power. Self-power is for you to go inside of you to figure out what's the cause of suffering, the cause of creativity is, versus depending on something else, which is other power. But the funny thing is that Zen doesn't put other power, therefore it's called the self-powered approach. You go through the meditation and sitting and all that for awakening. But within the same Buddhism, there's a Shin Buddhism or Pure Land Buddhism also, talking about Amida Buddha, who behaves like God. And in there, the famous saying is that it is okay as you are, just come to me so that you'll be saved. Without your changing yourself, this Amida Buddha promised that, and he became Buddha. So there's a clause of the sutra that defined that, talks about that was produced a couple thousand years ago, and the people who believed that sutra is known as the Pure Land sect of Buddhism. So the Pure Land sect or Shin Buddhism is very much like a Christian. But the point of this fantastic saying is of that I mentioned, you are okay as you are. Just come to me, you are saved. That's very kind and compassionate. Even to the point when Shinran, one of the priests in Japan, famous for starting this Shin Buddhism, is saying that even the sinful person go to heaven if the good person, good-natured person goes to heaven. That's a very famous saying to promote this Shin Buddhism, because it appealed so much to those laymen who may not be inclined to do training, self-power, to go through this difficulty to be enlightened, awakened, but depend on this other power, the God power, Amida power, so to speak. So their practice is just to say Namo Amida Butsu, which is to tell to Amida Buddha, I will obey to your, I would respect you and believe you're saying that we will be saved as we are. As simple as that. It doesn't require too much of a dogma. And perhaps that's the reason that appealed to many laymen who may not be so intellectually inclined, but more compassionate as the way, so that they feel that, oh, what a wonderful religion. All I need to do is to practice saying, believing Amida would save me. And there are those, actually, I put into a video called the group of people, Myokoni, the people who behave like wonders, liking all the wonders of nature. That's the kind of a translation I can make for the Myokoni. Myo is amazing, ko is something you like, nin is the person. So the person who likes the wonders. So the wonder of saving, like Amida Buddha, is the God power, not the self power. But interestingly, those two famous religions that is prevailing in Japan has produced the same person, same kind of a group of people who behave like both are enlightened and almost beyond the conventional belief. And they are peaceful, happy person, yet they can be also uh, looking at themselves that they are sinful. They cannot do things well. There's delusion. But the point of you are saved as you are without changing anything, but you are, is wonderful, and also connect to meditation and Zen, where you may have those thoughts, delusion, but being awake about it and equanimous about it, then you find the peace. So I'm not sure if I can explain more than that. What I just said is fundamental, and that's fundamental in the sense of the Zen approach and the Pure Land or Shin approach, because at the end, you don't deal with delusion, and that's what I said. That's more so away from delusion. Is what it is. That's Zen saying. But in the Pure Land saying, which is very much Christianity, that the God would save you, and you believe in it, then you are okay as you are, even if you are not in the sense of having a suffering. But if you just believe in this, you'll be saved. So if you spend time to think about this, I'm sure you get to the same conclusion that Zen and Shin or the Pure Land has the same construct in the sense of how to find happiness or away from suffering or delusion. So I'm not going to talk back about the detail of that, but those are the background, which could be very important to know about how we see religion, how we may see religion. So it's not so much about punishment as such in the Christian's case. In Pure Land and Shin has the appeal of compassion as the base, and you may call it the Zen has the wisdom as the base, where we find people, either case, come to the same nirvana, enlightened state, happy in the sense of liberated, not happy in the joy, but rather to be free and peaceful as you are. And that to me is profound. Although Nakayama-san that I mentioned earlier, he didn't know much about the Shin Buddhism, but my study of Daisetsu Suzuki and the wonderful learning from Myokonin that Daisetsu talked about, and I was very impressed by the way they conducted their life, but also understanding how they can be peaceful, even though they may have difficulty, delusion and so forth, but they can switch back very quickly and say, Namu Amida Butsu, or thank you, Amida Butsu, I'm saved as I am. So you may find that is beyond the logic, and that's what the religion is, if you can see that. So there's more talk about that, but going back to Nakayama, and the reason for my talking about this video is the notion of God, the play of God, and because that's how the universe is constructed, and we are the one thrown into this game that God created, which is how the creation of the universe was done and how the creation of us is here, how the creation of the suffering and so forth are here. But there is the reason behind it as if there's a power of God, or you can call it law of nature. And that's how Nakayama talks about God, not using the term God, but equating there's a law of nature that is constructing everything as we are. And therefore, if you know that and connect to that or understand that, which is not easy, but to be able to see how it's constructed, then your job is to learn how to play the game. The game was constructed by God or just the law of the universe prevailing around us. So, notion of God, law of nature, how the universe is created, how we are created, and how we may be able to play with the way the game is played out. If you know that, you can then entertain yourself, so to speak. I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but you can just play the game God created and be happy with it. So that's the bottom line of his saying. And that's the kind of conversation I had with Mr. Nakayama. Very calm, gentlemanly, and scientific. Still remember when I visit him, every time I go back to Japan. For example, I talk about something, and if that inspired him, which happened every now and then, next time I go there, he had already published a book about what we talked about, I mentioned about. And that's the kind of relationship I enjoyed. At the time, I was not quite as aware of what he was talking about, but there was such an attraction for me to get into. In the meantime, I was going through Daisetsu, lots of books and reading sutras and various religions. And he's coming from different angle, yet we have the similar base of utilizing the brain and the scientific approach to understand what this is, yet be able to talk about the color of tulip flower, because that's how the God is playing the game and how his power is manifested, and we can find the awe, the beauty. And he says how wonderful it is. Without anything in the background or because of what we talked about, but at the time when he uttered that, I was looking at the same tulip and I don't remember how I felt. Probably I was amazed the way he said about it without knowing the intent why he said it. But I fully understand. I would like to say that, like I mentioned about going out and looking at the sky and you found something profound, or the flowers, swinging in the wind. They're always that manifestation of the God power or the play of God, the games played out in a marvelous fashion, the beauty and all the intricate process that goes behind, including how we are constructed in terms of how we process food and the energy generated, whatever the case may be. And even if we don't do well, not understanding well, and not following the law of nature, we create the delusion. But at the end, it's just a manifestation of how the God is playing its game. And for us to understand that or relate to that or believe in the power of God, so to speak, or the nature of the law of the universe, then our mind may be awakened to the point that we can play the game that God or the nature has been prevailing and functioning and connecting to that. So there's a peace of mind, understanding, and be able to play with that game. Let me just give one story and maybe end this. One of the myokoni was in the boat, and the sea was rough, so many people were afraid. And this guy, I forgot his name, one of the myokoni, was sleeping. So people said, "What's going on? This guy is just making a little noise and sleeping when people are very upset." So told him, "Hey, we are in this danger. What? I don't know what's going to happen with this." And the guy woke up and said, "Oh, we are still in this world," and then went back to sleep, meaning that he was not afraid. He was peaceful with the way it is. And because you can say, the reason is that he is at peace with the nature, the things that happens. It's the way it is. You accept as much as God or Amida Buddha would accept him, and he believed in it. So there's nothing to be fearful about. So that's the kind of saying that Daisetsu, I think, may have mentioned it. I forgot the name of the guy. Anyway, another story, because this is also interesting to me. I think this is Saichi is the name of the myokoni. Lived in the rural part of Japan, perhaps 3, 4, 500 years ago. And he left, no, maybe like 100, 200 years ago, not that far, because I remember there was a note of him writing, and that was his memoir, or the utterings. And he was the guy who cut wood to make the geta, which is like a sandal. That was his life. And every night he does it. And when he's doing it, a thought pops up and he writes down. And this guy's life is quite amazing. And one of the story I remember related to what I mentioned is that one day he was, that's right, he was in a temple somewhere where the Buddha is, or maybe there's a statue or something standing, and right there he was sleeping or something like that. So people were concerned, what is this guy doing? He's not supposed to be sleeping there. Let him get out of the room, because there's a sacred place. So they were to do that, and then shaked him up and told him, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be. And his answer was, why do you care? I'm with my Oyasama, my parent Amida Buddha, in this room. So I feel very comfortable about it. Are you not with him? Why are you upset so about me being with the Amida Buddha? So that's another story of Myokonin from Shin Buddhism. A layman without much education, but had the belief that God would save him, or the Amida Buddha would save him. That's one way to play life, if you believe in it. And obviously, the Zen approach is a bit different, but interestingly, coming to the same kind of conclusion, so that you can see it that way. As much as Nakayama said, it's a game of play. If you know how to play the game, you may as well enjoy doing so. I don't know what may have delivered I have delivered in this, but I'm hopeful there's some wisdom that I feel is very profound, that may help us to live a life as if we are playing the game of God, enjoying, peaceful, have fun, relaxed, liberated, and go through whatever the difficulties we may face. Be happy with it. Be as you are, and you are saved. That's true in this Shin Buddhism or Pure Land sector Buddhism, but it is the same in Zen. If you are being aware of what's going on and equanimous, you are at the same space as if meeting God and playing with the game He provided. Thank you.